I am very delighted to show you a fascinating game between two top grandmasters which finished in only 19 moves, and a lot of things were happening in this game, so I'm pretty sure you're going to enjoy what is happening in the next video. Let's have a look at the game between Fabiano Caruana and Nodirbek Abdusattorov. It's a game played at the Julius Baer Rapid Tournament, online event with a lot of top grandmasters, and I would like to thank one of the followers of the channel who mentioned it in the comments, as frankly I had missed this game myself, but this game you definitely want to see. So if you ever see an interesting game, feel free to let me know in the comments. Of course, let me know what you think of this game and other games, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. This is really exciting top level chess from the highest level. Fabiano Caruana, 1e4. c5, the Sicilian Defense, and after knight f3, black goes for a slightly unusual line with the move knight f6. It's called the Nimzowitsch variation. Usually black plays other moves to develop its pieces. Knight f6 is a move which is usually later played, and now it does allow white to advance the pawn to e5 to attack the knight. The knight comes into the center to d5, which is standard way of playing, and now the move knight c3 is the most challenging continuation. Offering the exchange of knights, of course, white is threatening to take the knight, so black got to think about how to deal with it. Taking the knight on c3 is one of the main options, after which d takes c3 is usually played, and taking away from the center is usually not the main recommendation, but here it's with the idea to open up the path for the bishop to let pieces join the action as well. We get to see something very similar in the game, but Abdusattorov, rather than taking on c3, played here the move e6. That's an interesting move. So basically he says that, okay, if you take, I take back with my pawn, and the double pawns are not a problem, because very soon the pawn from d7 will move to d6, so that this bishop can be developed as well. And okay, it's maybe a little bit better for white, but it's absolutely playable. The move played by Caruana is a very ambitious idea, and I'm very interesting to discuss it now, as he played the move knight e4. The knight is stable in the center, and it's doing well here because of the pawn on e5, which covers both the d6 and f6 square. And okay, if white is able to move freely, then okay, black is gonna suffer a bit in the long run with that light squared bishop on c8, which doesn't have great potential. So what black did here is playing the move f5, attacking the knight on e4. The idea is that if you take en passant, knight takes f6, and now this pawn is no longer there, which means that very soon black is able to take over the initiative in the center by occupying it with its own pawn. So that's why taking en passant is not a critical move. But look, if you see this for the first time and you're a beginner, you may think this is looking really bizarre. Caruana went for the move knight c3 back. So he has played now 1, 2, 3 moves with its knight to come back to c3. That seems to be a waste of time. Well, always compared with what your opponent is doing, and you still see that white is having some small lead in development. Black has made a lot of pawn moves, and the big question, of course, is whether a move like f5 is really gaining time or is just a weakening of black's king's position. So knight takes c3 was played now anyway. D takes c3 with the same plan to get his bishop out. Knight c6, the bishop comes to f4, very logical move, and after queen c7, not really sure this is what you have to do, but very often the queen goes to this square. You're putting a bit of pressure against the pawn on e5, but should be mentioned that this pawn is still very well supported by the white pieces, so it's very unlikely black is able to exert pressure there. So now the bishop goes to d3. Interesting move. Another plan could be just to move the queen to one of these squares, followed by castling queenside. And then the question is whether this bishop is doing really well on d3 or not. Because if you look at this bishop, okay, it's restricted by the pawn on f5, and black has an other idea in mind as well. Let's have a look. Black played the move b6. White goes queen e2. And here I would expect black to play bishop b7, definitely, to get a bishop on a nice diagonal. Maybe the idea could be to castle queenside at some point, because if you castle in the other direction, keep in mind that with his pawn on f5, white has a hook. White has ideas to go for a very quick g4, maybe be prepared with a move like rook g1, and then white is really fast in opening the file, so therefore it could make sense to get your king over to that side of the board. But Abdusattorov took some liberties here, and I'm not sure this is what black is supposed to do now. He played a6. It's a pawn move. I frankly don't like it too much. After castling queenside, white continues with its plan. Queen is doing well on the e file, protecting the pawn. The d file is free for the rook. And black goes for the move b5. So here again, we see a lot of pawn moves. We are on move 11. And so far, black has only exchanged one pair of knights, developed one knight and the queen, while the other pieces are still on their back rank. So white has already developed all its pieces. King is in safety, but has to deal with potential problems like c4, when the bishop on d3 is lacking square. So you have to be very alert. Now the next move by Caruana is very instructive, as he is fighting for the initiative and he shows that he is not afraid of giving up a bit of material. He played a move g4. Very aggressive move, and the pawn of course can be taken on g4, but after f takes g4, the knight comes into g5, and here we see that the bishop is safe now again, can always come to e4 whenever it's under threat. The queen is about to take on g4, the g file is open, we do get access to the black king, pawn on h7 can be taken. This is exactly what black needs to avoid. So rather than taking the pawn, the critical move, and that was played in the game by Abdusattorov, is the move c4. So the bishop is just trapped in the middle of the board. But here again, it's another pawn move. And now Caruana shows some really great attacking skills by sacrificing the bishop on f5. Very important pawn. Of course, black accepts the challenge. Otherwise, his entire strategy just backfired. E takes f5 played, and now it's g takes f5. And look at these two pawns. They are really taking away many squares from the black pieces, and later on they can move up the board, maybe e6, maybe f6, with the goal of opening up the files towards that black king. For instance, if black would go bishop e7, white is just going to place the rook on g1 with pressure against g7. Things are really unpleasant here for black. So what black did in the game is playing the move bishop b7. So he's really hoping that with his move its king is able to escape to the other side of the board. But now white is really fast. Goes for the move knight g5, guys. This is a big move with the main point that black is unable to castle, because if you do so, there is knight f7 with a knight fork and you're going to win some material back. You can move your bishop and say that, okay, take this one of these rooks, white will probably do it, and then you get a situation in which white has a rook against two minor pieces of black. But still, I believe that the rooks are excellently working together. One can come to the g file. You don't have to take yet one of these rooks. You can just wait till one of the rooks moves and then you're going to take. I believe that white still has a massive initiative, as both white rooks are on half open files, putting pressure on the opponent. So that is not a possibility. But what should black do then instead? Can you attack that knight with h6? No way. There is queen h5 and black's position is falling apart. This king is in really big trouble, so you cannot allow that. If you play a move like bishop e7, trying to eliminate the potential attacker, well, then the big move here is to play the move f6. The idea is that if you start with queen h5, black can still block with g6, and after taking the pawn, black really quickly escapes with the king. That's not what we want. If you start with f6, you attack the bishop. If you do take it, now it's queen h5 check, and the king can't go to a good square. There's no longer g6 to block the check. If the king goes to f8, it's just mate in one on f7, thanks to the cooperation of queen and knight. If you go to the other side with your king, king d8, then there is knight e6 with a huge knight fork. You're winning the queen thanks to this skewer to the pawn on d7 being pinned. So a lot of problems for black, as you can see. There's no time to get the king out of the center. In hindsight, maybe castling queenside would have been the best move, but knight e7 was played in the game. Understandable decision, as the rook on h1 is under threat, and also the knight is hitting the pawn on f5. And there are quite a number of interesting moves. One of the ideas, by the way, is that queen h5 will be met again by g6, and black is able to hold some sort of a balance. It's not a great position, but that's not what white should do. White played in the game the move rook h2 e1, removing the threat, and the rook is quite stable there. And still, there are a lot of ideas for white trying to open up the position. And well, black played a move knight takes f5, and it seems as if black has managed to get rid of a very annoying pawn. So there are a number of ideas. Once again, queen h5 runs into g6, and now there's no longer a pawn on f5 to take on g6. So that just fails for a clear reason. The move I want to play here is e5, e6, just with the idea to open up the center immediately. But the problem is that, okay, you're attacking the bishop, but also now the queen can simply take that bishop on f4 with check. So no time to open up the position yourself here as white. Let's go back, because white has a brilliant move and I want you to find it. Hopefully you're able to do so. It's not an easy move, but it has to do with the fact that you want to play the move e6 with tempo, so that you're setting up a threat against the queen and against another piece. And with the move knight f7, you're trying to force the black king to take that knight, because if black would do that, there is this move e6 with tempo. It's a check, and that is crucial. If you take the pawn on e6, you even don't have to take the queen. It's just checkmate in one. With your queen, game over. If the king goes away, then, well, the bishop can simply take the queen. As simple as that. That's just it. So knight f7, this is a big move, guys. You're threatening to take the rook. Also, the black king is not allowed here to castle and escape to the other side. If you move the rook away, then it's knight e6, check. Forking the knight, of course the knight can take, but then it's e takes d6 with check, the e file is open, and the queen can be taken next. That is it. If the king goes away instead, then the knight can be taken. The attack is still going on. White is doing absolutely fine here with a crushing attack with all pieces participating. So black played here the move g6, but it's absolutely hopeless. After knight takes h8, black went for the move bishop g7, hoping that you can take that knight in the corner, you can castle queenside, trying to consolidate the position. But now the most funny move of the game, it's even the final move of the game, because knight f7, the knight comes back to that square where it sacrificed itself. So this is the third piece sacrifice in only 19 moves. And here Abdusattorov realized that, okay, this is not a fair competition. I better don't challenge a top player like Caruana. The knight still cannot be taken because of the move e6 with check, winning the queen. If you play anything else, well, white is an exchange up and all its pieces are really looking great. Knight e6 will be played probably, or very soon e6 can be played, as long as the bishop on f4 cannot be captured with check. It's just absolutely hopeless. But I thought this was a beautiful example how to play for the initiative, how to punish your opponent for making lousy pawn moves in the opening, neglecting your development. And you see that Fabi just went for moves like bishop takes f5, just trusting his intuition. He was not able to calculate it, but he understands that in such positions with all its pieces well placed, black's king stuck in the middle, then the position plays itself, and the only thing you have to do is open it and bring your pieces towards the black king. That's the main strategy for a successful attack. Hope you liked it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel once again, and then we are back with more fascinating content soon. Bye bye.